Hello everybody, and welcome to today's session. My name is Ben Taunt, and I'll be spending the next 30 minutes talking you through my views on how you can do it right the first time and deliver what you plan by increasing your use of mature construction-orientated project planning tools. In terms of our housekeeping today, everyone's microphone is muted, so don't worry about any background noise if someone comes and answers the door for you. If you missed any part of today, everything I say and do is being recorded, and you'll get a link later today to allow you to watch back that recording at your leisure, and you can also share that with colleagues who may have missed this. Our agenda: I want to spend a little bit of time talking about some of the challenges that we've discovered as an organisation when we've taken companies through the process of maturing their project planning processes. I'll then highlight how you can use Powerproject, a software application by Elecosoft, to mitigate some of those challenges, before finishing up with some comments on the next steps you might want to take along this timeline. I should also say that there is a question and answer panel available through the GoToWebinar control panel. Please do type any queries you have into that. It'll pop up on my screen over there. I'll do my best to answer them as we go along, and also pick up any other questions at the end of the session. So let's talk about some of the common challenges that we encounter as an organisation when we're engaging with construction companies who are looking to mature how they plan their projects. The biggest barrier, frankly, is this perception that we do it the way we always do, and we don't have the time to make a change. It's quicker for this construction business to carry on doing things the way we always do it, but it is to invest in any new techniques or any new software that might actually make things better for us going forwards. So there's a lack of time and there's a lack of attention to detail and an inertia by saying we've got techniques, we've got products and skills, we'll stay with our current methods because it's more comfortable to us than embracing a change effectively. That's also associated with a skills gap. We don't have the people, the resources, again, the time to invest in people who may be, for example, a dedicated planner in this business. A long time ago, there was a point where a planner was a dedicated role and everybody had one. Now we're often much more multi-skilled, which is a good thing, of course, but sometimes means that planning might only be a section of someone's time, and we're not giving it the full focus that we should be if we are to improve our delivery outcomes. Companies also often default to the generic products they always have. It's what we've always used. We've got this generic thing, let's call it something like a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet or even Microsoft Project. It's what we have, it will probably do the job, it's what we've always used, it's what I know other people use. So we'll just carry on down this route of using inappropriate software. There's often concerns over price, and the industry-specific planning products might be cost prohibitive, both in terms of the actual acquisition of the software, but also in that upskilling of the skills and resources. And it's not giving the prioritization, it's not giving the time that it deserves as something that we need to be focusing on as we move forwards. It is quicker and easier just to default to what we know best. And often we see this problem where planning and project plans are seen just as a pretty picture, something that we need to do to win a tender. So the main contractor says you need to submit me a Gantt chart, and I've gone through the pain of creating one, but after I've done that pretty picture, I've won the job, I'm going to move back into my habitual methods and processes of doing things. The client wants it, it's for the tender, but not embracing the real benefit that a comprehensive project plan can deliver. It's a tick boxing exercise in some people's books. I need to do it, I've been told I need to do it, it's good practice, so I'm going to create this project plan, but then it's static. It hasn't got the value associated to keeping it a living and breathing document as we go further on into our programs. So it's not given that consideration, that weight of importance that it should be. Now, clearly, all of this leads to some pretty significant problems. The planning stage can be very poor quality. This is the construction sequencing can be poorly thought out in advance and not properly considered. Then we actually get to starting the tasks, and the reality rapidly drifts away from what it was that we had planned. So we said we were going to do it in this way. We very quickly get some sort of interruption, a change perhaps, and then we just start making up as we go along. The way we've always done it, we start to busk it, and that means we drift away from the plan, and it becomes irrelevant. And that again is forgetting the importance of understanding what's in the sequence and what we should be doing. All of this leads to wasted time, leads to confusion, and leads to unnecessary stress within our construction project planning processes. Now, obviously, we want to avoid all of that, and Elecosoft as an organisation can help with that. We produce a project planning product called Powerproject, which is a comprehensive and easy to use project planning software, which I'm going to show you in a moment. And we've been doing this for a very long time. Now, that means a couple of different things, really. It means that we are very well known in this marketplace. It means our software has been developed hand in hand with actual real world users. That make it sound like it's a bit old and long in the tooth. Well, we have to constantly evolve, constantly embrace, constantly innovate, and we're doing that the whole time and allowing our customers access to this constantly evolving story. So let's tease out some of the specific benefits of Powerproject. In effect, it supports the way that you work. So it's not about saying, look, you're doing it all wrong, do it this way. It's about giving you a software product which is malleable enough to change and amend to what you want to do as a project planner, giving you the skills and the techniques that you want to utilize, but not forcing you down a certain set route. Within our technology stack, within the Elecosoft product portfolio, you have products that and modules that support things like 4D BIM planning, mobile applications, particularly for capturing progress on site, and collaboration between multiple projects, multiple planners, all within one technology stack. So whilst you may only start with, for example, our most simplistic entry-level tools, you know you're buying into a solution set where you can evolve within your software environment at the same time as your project management maturity evolves. Not just about tenders. Yes, it helps you to create that plan. It helps you develop the data layers of the rich information that needs to go on top of that basic core activity data, and to then manage those projects during the construction lifecycle. It manages change. It handles different scenario planning. It helps you to revise what you should have done, compare what we actually did, and document all of the reasons for change. We provide all the visibility over the costs and the resources needed to deliver your project. So those costs could be materials, could be plant, machinery, and it can also be your people, the direct labor and the indirect labor. We manage those resources, again, the people, the plant, the machinery, to make sure that we're not overcommitted, to understand what capacity to have, to understand the underutilization we might have in other areas, and drive up that visibility of what our people are doing and what they need to do next. We've got built-in algorithms, sort of AI, MI stuff that checks against industry standards and your own company-derived standards. So we can look at a project plan and say, look, there's some issues in here. You've got tasks with no logic links coming out the back of them. You've got tasks with names which are too similar, so it's going to cause confusion. We can programmatically check your project and show you issues of concern. And then we help to communicate this out to the wider community. So yes, nice, pretty pictures, making them visually appealing, that always helps. But being able to filter and sort and control what the output looks like to make that communication easy with other people. And we help to mitigate the risks, identify and mitigate the risks that exist within your project plan. And I touched on this earlier as well, the ability to catalog what's happening gives you this change history. So if you ever do get yourself into a litigious event, some sort of delay, disruption event, you've got all that evidence that you can fall back on to show what changed when and why. We also have a completely new product, which I'm not going to talk about today, called Asta Connect, about what we call the lean or last planning route, taking the detail from our strategic plan, our Gantt chart driven projects, into that more post-it note driven environment where we're used to organising things as post-it notes on the wall, digitalising that whole process, but also keeping the links between that digitalized post-it note last planner solution, and the strategic plan that's held in Powerproject. So do check back our website to find out more information on that tool. But for now, let's go look at some of the basics here about what is Powerproject and how it might help you to move forward in your project planning. Now, I'm going to start with one that we prepared earlier, really, to give you the art of the possible as an example. So this is a fully rich Gantt chart project plan for a two-story office block construction. You'll see straight away that it's visually appealing. We've got colors and date zones on here. I can pick up and zoom and pan and rescale things and get an understanding of what's happening when and where. I have these summary sections that allow me to open and close my views so I can drill into the detail of what it is, where and when we want to be doing something. So this is really the art of the possible of where we want to get to with multiple logic links, different critical paths being identified and things like that. But let me show you how you might do one of those from scratch. I'm going to create a project using a template, and that's part of that industry standard thing I said, where you can, or even company standard thing, where you can set what's important for you as a business, colors, codes, things like that. But it creates, as a starting point, a blank piece of paper. I then grab my mouse and I literally draw on screen these activities to represent different tasks that might be happening at a certain point in time. I'll keep the information here quite basic. But we might have a handover stage, and that might have 0 duration. And that gives me this point in time, this milestone that we call it on my project. Now, at the moment, I can pick up this stuff and drag it around. I can change its duration using my cursor. But at the moment, it's all free to float in time. So I want to categorize the logic between these activities. Again, I use my cursor, click onto the start or end of these activities, and create different logic links to show when we might be moving forwards between these activities, so that I can then start to build up that flow of dependencies. When I press the magic reschedule button on the top here, that is when all of these tasks move into their logical order. Some people like to have that reschedule turned on by default, and we can do that. We can have what's called an auto reschedule, so that as soon as I add a task, it jumps into its most logical place, and you don't have to wait to do that. But you'll see that everything gets quite jumpy when I do this. So some people much prefer to have auto reschedule turned off, so that you don't get the that sort of impact straight away as soon as I make a change. Let's turn that off for now. And you'll see that there is a red outline flowing down the activities, which are on what's called the critical path. And this task here, which isn't outlined in red, has got a tram line on the end of it. That's the float. This activity could happen anywhere within that bracket without impacting my handover date. So if I wanted to say these are the activities within the first phase of my scheme, I could put them in what's called a summary bar, open and close that summary, and you can see that I've got a little section of my project. If I'm confident this is how I want to deliver the first phase, I can create a baseline. The baseline is basically, let's call it in this example, our target program, and it's a carbon copy of everything I've currently got on screen. If I then repeat that example where tasks change and run late and do my reschedule, you'll see that the baseline stays where it was. That's the yellow bars on screen, but the reality of what's actually happened has now altered. And I can see straight away that my finish date has drifted backwards. If I have a finished variance column on screen, this lists the days that each activity is now late, and my handover is 12 days late. So I might want to go into my project and say, what can I do to bring this back on track? I'm now only running 2 days late. So we can manage all the different scenario planning, all that change management, which is very difficult to do in some of our competitive products. If you imagine you're using an Excel spreadsheet to represent this, and you made one change and you had to try and propagate that all the way through this chain, it's a lot of complicated formula or manual moving of colored blocks, massive opportunity for error that we want to try and avoid. Now, this project is very bland at the moment, so if I wanted to add some color to it, frankly, I can go into our code libraries over here, and say, well, each of these activities represents something different, and I'm going to color up these activities based on this code library. So these codes all represent something, and I just drop a code onto a bit of the project, and you'll see it changes color accordingly. Now, one of the other features of Powerproject is what we call multiple tasks per line, and here you'll see I'm drawing lots of small bars on one line. Now, these are often house plots, so let's call this a house plot number 1. If I did that same thing of adding colors to that house plot, you'll see that all these separate sections are basically tasks in themselves, but they're all on one line to save me having a great long piece of paper where I've got loads and loads of different activities flowing down the screen. So I can grab that house plot, I can replicate it dozens of times. If I've got a gang for each trade that moves through, I can start to build up this sort of waterfall view where I've got all of my different house plots. I haven't bothered to rename them, so they're all called house plot 1 for now. I'm sure you'll forgive me that. But you'll see that we've got all these multiple activities representing the work to be completed. I could drill down a level and have them on separate lines, but let's keep each house as nice one distinct line. But if I wanted to talk to my bricklayer and say to him, here are all the activities in this project plan that represent bricks, well, I've kind of given the game away by using a color code that looks like little bits of brick. If I double click over here on those bricks, I see immediately a filtered view of just the brickwork activities. So I've got an ability to communicate which plot, if these were numbered correctly, which plot they'd be working on when in this schedule. And any impact on delay is obviously going to have an impact on each of those different subsections of that task. So again, trying to replicate that in some of our competitors is incredibly difficult to achieve. So let me summarize all of that, make sure I do my house plots after phase 1. So actually phase 1 might be site establishment, and these tasks down the bottom here are my house plots. Now, you might not want to have to manually draw all this stuff. Perhaps you always do 3-bedroom houses, 4-bedroom houses in a certain way. I can have pre-configured down here different sections of tasks that we always do in the same way. So if I had like a superstructure activity, probably for that 2-story office block, I could pick that up and drag it and drop it on the Gantt chart. And it's already pre-configured all the links, the codes, the colors, the naming conventions for that type of work. If I then wanted to say who's going to be doing this activity, I would go into my site resources and put the bricklayers on those tasks. And I get a little tick underneath saying where those bricklayers are being consumed. And I could go through this project and assign different people in there. I can say, well, how many brickies do you actually need? I don't need 1, I need 5 of them, for example. And I can allocate the people all the way through the project. If I go back into the example where I've already prepared this, you'll see that there is a grid here of, firstly, the activities we're supposed to do, and then the number of people I need on each job, categorized as the chippies, the bricklayers, and the joiners. The flow of when we need these people is being shown in the graph below. So if I say, let's make this up, I need 4 bricklayers or 3 bricklayers on these columns tasks here, you'll see that when I did that, bricklayers were added to the column below. And if I then move stuff around, you'll see that all the graphs at the bottom change and reflect, and it's giving me that readout of who we need when on site. I could also put capacity levels on these graphs to show when we're exceeding the capacity of our teams. So I can understand perhaps when I need to get more trades and labourers into the site. Now, from our resources can also flow the costs. I can say how much, if I go back into this example here, I can say how much do we pay our bricklayers. I might have some standard cost rate, my mate's rate, my overtime rate. And from that, it derives a cost. It knows how much we pay per hour, £25 per hour, I think this is. It knows how long that activity, and the fact that I've said I've got 5 brickies working, it will tell me the cost that's associated to this work. Because this is all mapped over time, I then get to this example, where I've got different activities, they've got costs associated with them, and I've got these graphs along the bottom showing me my monthly costs, my net cash flow, and my total project cost. How are we deriving cash flow? Well, that's because we can also have income events. I might have milestone payments in here. When a certain milestone is ticked off, as per the contract, we receive the payment. And that then shows how the cash flow jags up and down until we get into the profit area at the end, as we're marking off all the completions. So I set all this stuff up. I get really good visibility of the people, the costs, and plant machinery I need, but I actually need to go out there and do the work. As I do the work, I need to be able to come in and say, right, this task here was supposed to be completed on a certain date and time, and I don't have that column turned on. So let's have my date, my planned date. Let's have. And actually, what I then need to show is when do we actually start it? And perhaps we started late, and what were we supposed to have done? What have we actually done? And the key thing I just twigged at the top here is I need to tell the software which week it is, what date are we in. So if we're in week 3, for example, you see this purple line appeared at the end of the 3rd week of the project. There's the week numbering, week 1, week 2, week 3. If I tell the software it is the end of week 3, it tells me what work you should have completed, what tasks are behind that purple line and should have been done. If I then say to software, what did we actually do? And I basically start to progress these activities and say, yep, we did achieve 100% of that activity, but we didn't do it on time. This other activity down here, we only did 50% of it, and we started that late as well. And you'll see that my project starts to move away from the reality of what we planned to do. Now, what we can't do is leave behind the line at the end of week 3 tasks that should have been completed. If it's the end of week 3, I can't have stuff in the past. I need to ask the software to move it all forwards. And that's where the reschedule comes in play. So if I hit the reschedule option, I want to straighten this pink line, purple line, at the end of week 3. And it moves forwards all the stuff that's still to be done and leaves behind all the successful things that we have achieved. That is, again, really tricky to do in some of our generic competitors like Excel and Microsoft Project, because I've got multiple progress periods here. I could actually have displayed online multiple progress lines so that I've got different views of what happened when, and I can toggle between this button at the top here to show the different weeks and what happened now we're in week 5. Well, week 5 occurred, something else happened. We did manage to complete all of that. I'm going to color it up using a different color because of the fact it's now in a different week. I've got a purple section. I've now got this kind of horrible light brown. Sorry, I didn't choose the colors for this demo. And I rescheduled everything again, and I've left behind this sort of breadcrumb, this track of what happened where and when. And this is going to be really important if I need to ever explain to someone what happened on site, why. But I am doing this natively within the Powerproject planning software, and we all carry one of these in our pockets these days, our mobile phone. So we have a mobile phone tool. You're seeing a replication of what I've got in my hand now on the camera screen here. I can go into my mobile phone and I can find, for example, this road, name the road base, and I can say in my mobile phone how much of it have I done in a given period. When did I actually start that activity? When did I actually finish that activity, etc., etc. I could take photos to prove my point. So let me just turn my camera on. Apologies, you don't want to see my face, but let's point it out the window and point at the building site over the road. I can go into that picture and I can say, look, there is a something here that I want to report from my mobile device back up to head office. I can draw on here, identify where there's an issue. I could say snag as highlighted or whatever. I can add comments like this. And anything that's done on the mobile phone then gets sent back to the main project planning tool you're looking at in the background, so that we've got this communication link between those who are using the desktop planning tool and those who've got mobile devices. In a house building environment, where I've got all the little plots per line, I get this view like I've shown on the screen here, where I just simply tick off each of those individual build stages. Don't really care how much of that one-day task I've done. I want to know, have you done it, yes or no? By far the easiest way is to tick that box and show that information coming back from the mobile device into the planning app. And that's how we can help keep all these projects flowing and moving forwards as we go further on. And just finally, as we start to sort of tease out the next steps for project planning, here I've got an example where I've imported the BIM model. I've pulled in the 3D model, in this case of a retail outlet. And now I've got a nice Gantt chart here with colors, codes, etc. like that. But we've also using this as the basis for the animation of how we're going to deliver this project. Powerproject's also showing a few examples of site objects, so site hoarding, site objects, porta cabins, my little cartoon digger going around there. It adds a bit of color, it helps with our presentation, it helps with the explanation of what's going on. Things like the positioning of tower cranes, so I can understand the logistics for this project, all tied into the project plan. So if there are changes on the Gantt chart, they're reflected in this animation. But again, this shouldn't just be about creating a nice video for tender. That would be missing the point. It'd be excellent to help us communicate to a trade what's happening tomorrow when they arrive on site. It'd be excellent as a tool to help us to show an example, if I bring that up on the screen, of what we were supposed to do versus what we actually did. We can actually have in Powerproject this view of plan versus actual in 3D. So if I just go back in time, stop that, go to there and hit play. I've got plan versus actual. I can actually look at two views of the same project and say, look, on one side, this is what we're supposed to do. On the other side, this is what the new timeline is telling us. I can do a visual comparison of the impact of delay. And that, again, helps with my communication and conversation around the problems that we're having because of the delays of this project. Okay, so lots of exciting things that using industry standard comprehensive project planning can do to help improve your maturity and your outputs and deliverables from your projects. So let's talk some pounds, shillings and pence here. If what I've shown you today is of interest, then you can buy that product as an annual subscription from Elecosoft. We have both a single user model and a concurrent user model. Single user subscription, annual payment to allow basically one person, one computer to use the software, £880. Concurrent user model is a fantastic way of reducing your costs because you share the license over a number of people. The license is basically flexible, so that when someone logs in, it consumes a license. When they log out, somebody else has access to that license, someone else within your team. So you don't have to buy 5 people a license each. You buy them 1 or 2 shared licenses for £1,500. I also showed you today the BIM module, the 3D rendering. That is an extension item that you have an option to take with the prices for doing that on screen. And the final bit of software I showed you was the mobile device, and that's only £165 per year per user. Now, we also provide a whole comprehensive set of training services around our software. So a lot of that based online these days, using Teams and Zoom to deliver training courses virtually to you wherever you happen to be. But we do also have classroom sessions. People get a lot more from a classroom session often. You've got a trainer over your shoulder looking at your screen, giving you hints and tips the whole way through, interaction with clients, competitors, during lunch hour and stuff like that. So a whole range of training options that you can find on our website. And finally, very early on, I said that we have a collaboration platform as well, and that's called Powerproject Vision. This is cloud-based collaboration using online file storage mechanisms to allow project planning data to be centralized, to be reported upon. So your management reports, your key performance indicator reports, all derived from a central repository of project planning data held in Powerproject Vision. And we do have specific webinars on that if you want to know more. And finally, that's all I wanted to talk about today. Hopefully that's a whistle-stop tour through some of the common problems that we find as people want to mature their project planning and the mitigations that you can deploy by using Powerproject. Thank you for your time today. If you're leaving the session today, there is a feedback form for you to fill in. Please do give us your views on today's session and what you'd like to know next from us. In the meantime, if anybody has any questions for me, please do tap them away to go to the webinar control panel, and it'd be a pleasure to answer those for you now. Okay, someone's asked for pricing on the training course. That's a very valid question. Let me grab the price list over here in the corner. So our standard training course is a 2-day introductory course. You can do that as 2 consecutive days or as 2 separate days. And if you did that 2-day course, it is £750 per person for a 2-day course. There are some discounts if you put more than 4 people on the training course together. And if it is more than 4 people, we can do it specific for one company, as opposed to merely buying a seat on one of our public courses. Someone's asked a question about how the software is deployed. Basically, is this a cloud-based platform? So most of what I showed you today is installed on the PC. So particularly things like the 3D rendering engine needs the power of a local device. So we have Powerproject as standard as a desktop installation of a Windows PC. We do have options to have that as a cloud-hosted service, and we publish it through the cloud to the end user instead. You have a bit of a web argument there. You've got to be online to access it, but it gives you more flexibility to access it from multiple devices. You have to be reliant on an internet connection working the whole time, but you can use it wherever you happen to be. So there's pros and cons of local deployment and web-based deployment. We're happy to talk you through the options for that. The mobile phone tool uses internet to talk between the 2 distant devices. And the collaboration platform I touched on the end, Powerproject Vision, is also a cloud-based platform. Okay, no more questions coming up today. So in that case, I'm going to thank you once again for your time. It's been a pleasure talking to you about this topic. If you have any further feedback for us, please do fill out a feedback form when the webinar closes, or simply get back in touch with us, and we'll be delighted to talk to you further. Thank you very much.